Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's session. I'm Katie Watson, and I'll be your host today on behalf of all of us at Secon. If this is your first time joining us, thank you so much for being here. And if you've joined us before for one of our sessions, welcome back. At Secon, we believe cybersecurity should be empowering and not overwhelming. We are a UK-based cybersecurity partner with over 25 years of experience helping organizations to take back control of their digital environments. I am very excited for this talk, which is proudly sponsored by RedFlags. In a moment, you'll be hearing from Glenn Wilkinson. Glenn is an ethical hacker, a keynote speaker, and the CEO of Aga Labs. Glenn has spent over a decade breaking into organizations to show them how attackers really think and how they operate. He has spoken on stages from DEF CON to Gartner, trained law enforcement and the military, as well as been featured in outlets like the BBC and CNN. Now, this perfectly leads into today's theme, which is social engineering. And social engineering is all about exploiting the human element, and that is exactly where RedFlags comes in. RedFlags is focused on empowering people to protect themselves from cyber attacks that target human behavior. Their technology provides real-time contextual nudges right at the point of risk, whether that's when you're about to click on a link that's suspicious, upload a sensitive file, or even plug in a USB device. The goal is simple but powerful: to guide and to support and educate staff right when it matters most so that threats are stopped before they escalate. Now, I know you're all here to hear from the man himself, Glenn. So just before, I will do some quick housekeeping. This webinar will be recorded. You will have access to the recording afterwards. There is going to be a Q&A session at the end. So throughout, please put your questions in and we'll do a session right at the end, go through some questions. And if, like me, you think of a question right after the webinar's ended, please do not fret. You can contact me at katie.watson@seconcyber.com and I will get in touch with Glenn and find out the answer for you. So without further ado, grab a coffee, relax, and I will hand over to Glenn. Thank you so much.
Right, thanks so much, Katie, for the kind introduction. I hope that you can all see me and see my screen. I can see Katie's face, got a thumbs up. Yeah, we're all good. Thank you so much to RedFlags and Secon for inviting me to give this talk today, and of course to all of you for giving up your precious time to come along. My name is Glenn, and my talk today is entitled Inside the Mind of a Hacker. So who am I? Well, as Katie alluded to, I'm an ethical hacker. That means my customers, my clients, they pay me to break into their systems to find the weaknesses, to try and fix those before the bad guys come along and do some actual damage. I've been doing this a very long time. And it's not a career choice I thought I would have when I was a curious teenage hacker until after university and a company came along and said, hey, we'll pay you to break into banks. Amazing. I'm also a keynote speaker, so I speak at events all over the world, from Vegas to Moscow, off to Sydney later this afternoon, actually, to speak at Cloudflare. So I speak at events all over the world to really share my excitement, my passion for hacking, for cybersecurity, and to bring that to the big stage. I am also the CEO and one of the co-founders of Aga Labs, and we are on a mission to kill ransomware. Get in touch if you think that may be of interest to you. But enough about me. Let's talk about you. I want you to imagine something. It's Monday morning, you've had a lovely weekend, you've just arrived at the office, and you've sat down at your desk ready to get on with a busy day of very exciting Word documents, as you can see in front of you. But lo and behold, before you even have a sip of your delicious, delicious Starbucks, you get a big red pop-up screen that says, oops, all of your files are gone. They've been encrypted, you're not getting them back, and we've stolen a copy of them. If you ever want to see your files alive again, pay us an awful lot of money, and you better do it in Bitcoin so you can't track us down. That is what a ransomware attack looks like. In a panic, you stand up, you look around the office, and you realize it's not just your screen. Everyone's screen in the office has this big red message. The servers in the basement, in the cloud, all the same big red message, all saying your files are gone. If you ever want to see them again, grab some Bitcoin and pay up. Unfortunately, not some dystopian future. This is the world that we live in. And the modern hacker gangs, this is their MO. This is how they operate. And their headlines back this up. I'm pretty sure that most of us in this room have read a headline or seen on the news something about ransomware. Global damages are expected to exceed 265 billion by 2031. The average UK data breach soars to 3.6 million pounds. The headlines speak for themselves, right? It's either hackers are breaking in, so that's called a data breach. Maybe they just break in, maybe they steal data or do something naughty. And typically after that, they deploy ransomware as a kind of cyber criminal ransom to try and get money out of you. We've probably all seen in the news, unfortunately, poor old Marks and Spencers. They've been hit pretty hard this year. And that was quite a long debacle they went through. Hackers broke in. We're pretty sure that was a group called, colloquially called Scattered Spider, which is a loose-knit group of hackers operating under the larger loose-knit group called the Com. But these hackers broke into Marks and Spencers, spent a couple of months digging around, deployed ransomware, and then sent a very nasty message, very nasty email to the CEO saying, "We have your data, pay up or you are toast." That group, we believe, used some ransomware software from a gang called Dragon Force. And I'll get more into how this affiliate program works in a minute, but here's a screenshot from the underground from Dragon Force. And Dragon Force are a group of hackers who make ransomware software. So here on the website, you can join up. It's about $177, bit of a random number. You can join up as an affiliate to Dragon Force and get a copy of some very nasty ransomware. And then any ransomware you deploy, they get a cut. Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's take a step back. What does it mean to be a hacker? Well, the term dates all the way back to the 1960s, would you believe it? So back then, computers were massive. They occupied entire basements. They did very simple operations, and they were very expensive. And in America, you'd have these universities or colleges with these absolutely behemoth, massive servers, these computers, and you had to book time in advance to use them. You'd feed in your punch cards. You'd have to have your software ready to feed into it. And it was very expensive to run these operations. So what students would do is they would write very, very, very efficient programs to squeeze out the maximum amount of time they could have playing with these little toys for them. And those clever programs they wrote were called hacks. And they were called hackers because they wrote these clever programs to be very efficient. And that's where the original term comes from. Only later on do we get the more colloquial modern term of someone who breaks into computer systems. But anyway, the hacker curiosity from the 60s to the 70s, we had this term in the 70s called phone freaks. So it's phone, PH phone, and then the freak, PH. So freak spelled with a PH, which is why now we have phishing and all these other modern hacker terms that start with a PH. But phone freaks were possibly the original hackers, and they used to hack the phone systems. Essentially, they're just curious tinkerers. They want to understand how the public phone system worked, and they would buy manuals or tinker with payphones or stick an oscilloscope on the infrastructure and figure out what it was made of. And it turns out that there was a breakfast cereal called Captain Crunch. And inside Captain Crunch, there was a whistle. Now, hackers realized that a large portion of how the phone system worked was with tones. So a tone would get sent down the phone line from your handset or the payphone, and that would instruct the phone network to do something. So you dial a number, and that instructs, okay, you've dialed this number. But hackers realized that the tone 2,600 megahertz would unlock trunk calling and allow you to make long distance calls. So this breakfast cereal had a whistle inside it as a free toy for kids, and it blew a perfect 2,600 megahertz, which means you could take this whistle, blow it into any handset, and get free long distance phone calls. And the hacker who discovered that, he took on the pseudonym Captain Crunch, and he's one of the original old school hackers. In the 90s, we started to see the advent of hacker gangs, not how we see them today, where they're more criminally focused, but more mischief focused. So in the 90s, you would have all these really grungy underground hacker groups, Legion of Doom, Masters of Deception, Loft Heavy Industries, and my favorite hacker group, Evil Angelica, which is why Angelica from Rugrats is on the slide here. And Evil Angelica, that hacker group, was my favorite when I was cutting my teeth learning the hacker arts in the 90s, because they would break into websites and deface them and leave really snarky, quite clever, tongue-in-cheek messages. And that's what hacking was back then. there was no proper real damage or criminal damage. These hacker gangs it was almost like they were gangs vying for, kudos or creds. They would break into servers and they would just deface the website. So instead of seeing the BBC News website, you would say, hey, Evil Angelica was here. We are the best hackers in the world. The rest of you suck. And so it was more almost graffiti spraying than anything nefarious. Another big milestone was probably the advent of nation state hacking. So we roll into the 2000s, probably the late 2000s. And with the advent of a lot more things being online, so a lot more systems, businesses, government infrastructure being online, we started to see nation states equipping themselves with cyber capabilities. The big story there is probably Stuxnet from around 2010, where the United States and Israel partnered up to write some really nasty ransomware, kind of a virus, a Trojan called Stuxnet, that they deployed on Iranian nuclear enrichment facilities, and they're able to spin up the centrifuges beyond capacity and physically destroy them. Coming a little bit closer to the modern day, we see the advent of cyber criminality. And we see a large portion of that today. I don't have percentages, but a good chunk of modern hacker gangs are driven by financial gain. And that's been enabled by ransomware and cryptocurrency. There are other aspects of cybercriminality, but ransomware is probably the most prominent and nefarious at the moment. So I'm going to talk about ransomware for a minute. To make sure we're all on the same page, I asked ChatGPT to explain ransomware like I'm 5 years old. Okay, imagine someone locks your toy box and says you can't open it unless you give them candy. Ransomware is like that, but for computer files, and the bad guys want money to unlock it. Essentially what that means in the practical world, ransomware is just a program. It's just a file, an exe file that runs on your computer. And when it runs, it goes through all of your files and it scrambles the contents with a special password, and then gives you a big pop-up message or a note on your desktop that you got to open and read and says, hey, your files are gone and we stole a copy. If you want to see them back, give us some Bitcoin. So it's not massively sophisticated. It's just possibly a little bit clever. And I'd like to take a moment just to go through the timeline of ransomware. Did you know, so you can go back to your IT team today or your security team and drop them this little nugget. The first case of ransomware dates back to 1989, would you believe it? And it was called the AIDS Trojan. It was distributed by a floppy disk at a conference. I think it was like a conference about AIDS, I guess. Distributed by a floppy disk. If you took that disk home, put it in your computer, sometime later, you get a big red pop-up message saying, right, your files, there's a problem with your files. If you want to repair them, please put a check in the post for $189 and send it to me, Mr. Joseph Pop, and here's my address. So interesting idea, holding files for ransom, but the air quotes hacker gave his home address in the ransom note, asking for payment, via cash or via checks. Obviously, the police came along and immediately arrested him. But the idea was there. 2006, GP code, probably the first piece of what we'd recognize as modern ransomware. Files were encrypted, good encryption this time. And the payment was demanded by a kind of a shady bank called Liberty Reserve based out of Costa Rica. And essentially you're asked, hey, your files are gone, make a payment to this bank and you'll get your files back. And this Liberty Reserve Bank allowed you to open an account with just a name and an email address. There was no KYC or anti-money laundering, so anyone could do it. And it was obviously a haven for criminality. And that was obviously quickly shut down by law enforcement. But where it gets interesting is 2008. 2008 was the advent of Bitcoin. The original Bitcoin paper dropped in 2008. If you haven't read it, go give it a read. It's a fascinating paper. It's only about 4 pages long. It's very readable. And it was released by a pseudonym called Satoshi Nakamoto. We still don't know who that is. Man, woman, child, group, government body. But they released this idea of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and decentralized money. It was after the 2008 financial crisis. And later that year, the first Bitcoin was mined, the Genesis block. And from there, well, we all know the story. Cryptocurrency took off. If only we had kept those Bitcoins from back then, we would all be millionaires and not sitting on a Teams call on a Thursday morning, or as an afternoon, Thursday afternoon. But what that enabled was modern ransomware. That was the turning point. 2013, we see CryptoLocker. CryptoLocker was the first real proper modern variant of ransomware. Encrypted your files, distributed via botnet and spear phishing, and it demanded payment via cryptocurrency for the first time. The payment was a bit silly. It was about $300 compared to the average, 5 million these days. But that was the first instance of proper ransomware and using this anonymous currency mechanism. Because now we can demand payments, but you can't get tracked like the previous two incarnations. 2015, 16, 17, we see Petya and not Petya. These were quite nasty ransomware variants. Petya and then not Petya was a variant that infected pretty much every business in Ukraine. And this was the first supply chain attack. So hackers broke into a company called Medoc in Ukraine and replaced their update software with a piece of ransomware called NotPetya. So Monday morning, all Ukrainian businesses come to work. They turn on their computers. Hey, is a nice new update. Do you want to install it? Yes, of course I do. But the update was in fact backdoored with this NotPetya ransomware. And pretty much every business in Ukraine got infected. That's interesting for 2 points. One, that's the first supply chain attack we've seen for ransomware deployment. And two, the first nation state attack, because it was attributed back to the FSB, to the Russians. So the Russians, we all know what was going on in Crimea during that time. So this was an attack on Ukraine by Russia by deploying ransomware. And it turns out it wasn't even ransomware. It was called wiperware. Wiperware looks like ransomware, but you pay up and deletes your files anyway and laughs in your face. Very nasty. 2017, maybe the first time most of you on the call heard about ransomware, was the WannaCry. So WannaCry, if you remember, hit the NHS. I think it was about £100 million worth of damage, billions globally. Very nasty piece of ransomware. Fascinating story. So WannaCry spread via a vulnerability called Eternal Blue that was developed by the NSA in America. So the spooks in America essentially made this cyber weapon that got hacked and leaked by a group called the Shadow Brokers. And then the North Koreans came along and they picked up that cyber weapon and they weaponized it to spread and deploy ransomware. So the North Koreans got a hold of a cyber weapon the Americans made that was leaked by another group. And that's how they're able to spread WannaCry. And the MO is obvious. Sanctions are hitting North Korea hard. They want money. Cryptocurrency is a great way to get money into the regime to fund, to fund what they want to do. Moving on from that, probably around 2019, 2020, we start to see Maze and Ryuk and the first instance of what we call double and triple extortion. So hackers would break in, they would steal your data and steal your customers' data, and then threaten you, hey, if you don't pay up, we're going to leak your data on the internet, and we're going to leak your customers' data. So if you're an MSP, for example, and you hold lots of customer data, it's a pretty good point of leverage. Pay up, or we're going to embarrass and destroy your business and all of your clients. And I'll say that leads us up to today. And the trends I'm seeing today from the hacker underground, specifically around ransomware and these hacker groups, is one, ransomware as a service. So I alluded to this earlier. These hacker groups create the ransomware software, and on the dark web, you can go and lease or buy that software. So you can go and buy a copy of Dragon Force or Lockbit or something, and you go and deploy it somewhere, and the ransomware gangs take a cut. They take 30% of the ransom paid, you take 70%, and they handle all the admin and the support and the chat from the targeted victims and everything, and they even have negotiators on their team and everything. All you have to do is just go deploy the ransomware. Then you also have initial access brokers on the underground. So you can go on the hacker underground, lease your copy of the ransomware, and also go and buy access to already hacked companies. So these call them IABs, initial access brokers, they just spend their days breaking into as many systems as they can, and they put that access up for sale on the dark web. So go, hey, I want to buy access to a bank in the UK, filter by whatever. Okay, buy that access, buy some ransomware, put them together, and boom. And that's what we saw Scattered Spider do. So they came to the forefront in about 2023, I think it was, when they hacked MGM and Caesars in America, the casinos, right? And they deployed, they social engineered the front desk. Essentially, they called like IT support or something. Hey, I can't log into my system. Can you reset my access? So they weren't particularly sophisticated, but a little bit clever. So that was initial access. And then they leased the ransomware software from a group called Black Cat or Alfie and deployed that. And the ransom was about £11 million for Caesars, I think, and they paid up the next day because £11 million is a rounding error to casino when they're out of service. We don't know if Marks and Spencer's paid up. Rumors are that they did. We have no idea for sure, but at least they held out for long enough to make the hackers really think their choices of targeting UK retail. And we've seen the group pivot from UK retail to airlines and airports now. So Scattered Spider from the underground chat and the Telegram groups looks like they're targeting airports and airlines. And the most recent victim was Qantas last year. Some good news amongst all of this. So more recently, law enforcement has been taking a real hit against these hacker gangs and making a bit of an impact on that front. So I'd like to tell you about the hacker mindset. How do hackers think? And we of course have the white hat hackers like myself, who are pen testers or red teamers or security researchers, the criminal components, the nation state components, but generally we're all driven by the same mindset. We want to learn and understand and defeat systems, to bypass systems. And if you can understand the hacker mindset, that can help you beat the hackers at their own game. Good hackers are methodical. So I used to do training at Black Hat, for example, and I'll drum into my students, you need to be methodical. You need to follow a process. You need to be disciplined, step by step by step. It's not just, hey, smash the keyboard and follow, run down random rabbit holes. Yeah, you can hack that way, but you won't have consistent success. And it's generally broken down into a few different stages. This is my own hacker life cycle, but you've got the cyber kill chain from Lockheed Martin and the Mitra attack. But generally, the approach, reconnaissance. What can I find out about my target? Get some initial access, get persistence, make sure I can stay in these systems, move around the network. So you break into one edge system, but then you move through the network without the IT guys even knowing. Exfiltrate, so steal some data, and then probably erase your tracks and jump out the door, back door, before you deploy your nasty, nasty ransomware. Okay, so I want to tell you a story. And the story about to be told could be true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent or the guilty. That's a quote. Well, I can't ask you because I can't hear you or see you, but say to yourself if you know where this is from or in the chat. So that's a quote from Dragnet, a US kind of cops and robbers type TV show from the 80s. I'm from Zimbabwe, so our TV is about 10 years behind. So we got the show in the 90s. Point being, I've spent a long time breaking into systems. I can't tell you specific stories because of NDAs and things, but I'm going to make up a story based in reality of real engagements I've been on. I want you to imagine there's a company called Acme Corp. So Acme Incorporated, big multinational company. Front page news, Acme Corp cyber attack. What do we know? So they've been hacked, maybe ransomware has been deployed, who knows what's going on, but they've been breached. And I want to tell you about how hackers would have done that. And there are a lot of different ways to skin a cat. Probably the hackers will start off going to the Acme Corp website. Let's have a poke around and see if there's any vulnerabilities or weaknesses in the website. That's kind of like trying to kick down the big front door of a castle. It's probably quite well defended and a bit hard to get in. They would probably do some network level reconnaissance. So they would try and find all devices on the internet that belong to Acme Corp. So other web servers, IP ranges, just internet facing computer stuff, with the hope of either finding some kind of login that's just on some edge server that someone's forgotten about. Maybe it's got a default username and password. That happens more often than you think. Or find some vulnerable system. And for those of you who have seen The Matrix, here's a demo I put together of Trinity in The Matrix. She hacked a power grid. She hacked the power grid, and by a real exploit, by the way, in the movie, and turned off all the city lights. So maybe hackers will try and find some exploit on some edge device. Maybe they'll target your Wi-Fi. So here's a map of all Wi-Fi points. I forget where, somewhere in the UK, but here are all the Wi-Fi access points. So a hacker would maybe jump on Wiggle, go to your HQ, look at your Wi-Fi access points, figure out what's juicy and worth attacking, and then come sit in your parking lot and have a crack. But I can tell you, hackers are lazy. I like to maybe say efficient, but the honest truth is we're lazy. And we will take the path of least resistance. What is the easiest way to break into your organization? I can tell you, as in 2025, as I said in 2020 and probably 2015, the easiest way to break into any modern organization is by manipulating people, tricking people into doing something they should not do in order to get initial access. And all of the big hacks that we see recently, of either just generic hacks or ransomware being deployed, or state-sponsored, or even politicians being hacked, like the DNC, it starts with manipulating people into handing over some initial access point. So going back to Acme Incorporated, how might a hacker break into Acme Incorporated? As boring as it sounds, they'll probably start on Google. Right, let's jump on Google and let's search for Acme Corp and see what they're up to. Well, we found their LinkedIn page. And if we want to target people, here is a treasure trove of people. How many says on the screen there's somewhere, I don't know, a few hundred, a few thousand employees at Acme Corp. Go and do this against your own organization and see who you can find and what you could hypothesize about doing. What hackers will do is they will browse people and they'll find a target who we would believe has a fair degree of access to systems, and then would map out the relationships with that person. So who are their bosses, their subordinates, who do they report to, who would they communicate with, but at a different site. So they're not going to sit next to them in the office and then, hey, did you just send me this weird email? So try and map out relationships. And it probably would go beyond LinkedIn. You would find a bunch of information on LinkedIn. You would jump on Facebook and Instagram. I use a tool called Maltego. I released a video a couple of days ago on what we call OSINT with Maltego, open source intelligence gathering with Maltego. But you essentially do your homework on the target. Once we know enough about them, we'd find a way to communicate with them. Email or phone number or Twitter or LinkedIn or something. It's not hard to find an email address for an individual at the company. If you find one email address, for anyone at the company, it's probably indicative of the other email. So here it's firstname.surname@Acme Corp. And there's tons of websites and utilities where you can find this. So our chap here that we found, Don Clark, he's a research scientist at Acme Corp. And we find his email address. And what's the hacker going to do then? Well, we go back to the original Acme Corp website, and maybe we buy a lookalike domain. So for a small price of about $10, we can buy Acme-Corp. We call that, maybe a domain typo. Who would notice if you went to Acme-Corp rather than Acme Corp? Long story short, the hacker could then craft an email, send it to the target, and entice them to do something. That might be to click a link, to download a file, to hand over a password, to transfer money, to change banking details for an invoice, but to do something. We call this social engineering, or just more colloquially, just manipulation. And let's think about this. So here's an email that the hacker has put together, and they've sent it to Don Clark at Acme Corp with the goal of manipulating him to get some kind of initial access to their systems. Now, there's a lot of text there, so let's break it down piece by piece. So keep in mind, this is an email that has landed on Don's computer. He's sitting at the office, and this email has popped up. Who's it from? Well, it's from Laura Smith at Acme Corp. If you're paying attention, it's Acme-Corp, whereas the real domain is Acme Corp. I left that there just to illustrate, but it's actually not that hard to have what is displayed to be different to the actual sender. So you can hide even further, but for the demo, I left that there just to make it obvious. It's from Laura and to a bunch of other people at Acme Corp. And those are all people I found on LinkedIn. And the hacker has faked this email. They bought the domain Acme Corp, Acme-Corp, and they sent this email to Bob, pretending that it's coming from Laura, pretending it's to Bob and Alan and all these other people. And also pretending that Don has accidentally been carbon copied into the email. Who hasn't been accidentally CC'd into an email on this call? We all have. It happens all the time. To generally ignore it, maybe have a peek. What's interesting, though, is the email says, "Dear all, based on our call earlier, please find attached our 2025 budget, including proposed redundancies for reducing our R&D staff. As discussed, keep this confidential, etc." So that's Don's job. I work in R&D. They're talking about me. Looks like they accidentally copied me in. There's a whole conversation going on here about reducing staff in my department. And then furthermore, it says, "For more detailed information, see our press release below. And please log in with your usual username and password." Not only that, but there's also an attachment. And Acme Research Budget 2025. Okay, that seems reasonable. It's a Word document. It's from people I know. It looks like I've accidentally been carbon copied in. So the hacker approach here is there's different levers we can pull. So this is from a person of authority. So it's Don's boss, the head of HR, the head of finance, and things like that. And there's some incentive lever we're pulling. Hey, your job is on the line. So you really want to have a look at this link, and you really want to have a look at this attached document. And there's some kind of temporal component. Well, if I'm going to get made redundant, I really want to know really quick so I can plan things. And what's nice here is he will probably open it. And even if he realizes, oh, this looks a bit suspicious, he probably won't report it because he'll get challenged. Well, clearly this was not for you. Why on earth did you open this email? So even if bad things start happening, from my experience, because I've used this exact attack, for an ethical hacking engagement, and it tends to work. But let's have a look at what this looks like in real life. So if I stop sharing my slides, and now I'm going to, share my full screen. If you give me one quick second, share entire screen. Okay, cool. So here is the actual email. So this email is being viewed on Don's computer. So somewhere far away, and somewhere else in the world. So here's the email he's reading, and over here is a bit of hacker software called Metasploit. Imagine that this computer is in a different physical location to this one. We're on a Teams call, so it's hard to physically do that. But these are two different computers. Here's the hacker's computer, and here's Don reading his email. So I'm going to drag your faces out the way so I can see what I'm doing here, other than Katie's smiling face, who gives me confidence to continue. Okay, cool. So here's the email, and this long email thread back and forth, blah, blah. Here's all people he knows and trusts. So we've got this Word document, and he's probably going to think that's pretty interesting. I'm going to have a click of that. But let me just show you how this Metasploit software works. First, we're going to copy these magic hacker commands. You'll notice hackers always have a black background and green text. It's not the default, but we make it like that. What I'm doing now is I'm arming the hacker software. Keep in mind, this is on some server far away on the internet. And Don's like, yeah, I really need to open this document because I'm super duper nervous. My job is on the line. And okay, document opens, looks like a regular Word document. Let's see, this document has been packed. To view, please enable content. Okay, there's enable content and click open button. Here's my company logo at the top here. Something encrypted thing. It's valid from yesterday until today, so it expires today if I want to have a look at it. And we're all used to getting DocuSign documents or something. So you think, well, that security warning is quite small. It doesn't look too serious. Well, my job's on the line. This is from my boss. I'm sure it's fine. Let me enable content and then push open. Okay, it's decrypted. Okay, cool. Long document. Let's have a read. Meanwhile, over here on the hacker screen, you would have noticed things are happening. And when you're on an engagement and you see these things happening, that's generally where the hacker, air fist, your hand up in the air, and yes, that's this is good stuff that's happening. If I type the command sessions, I can now see that a new session has come through. So what has happened there? Essentially, there was a Word macro inside this Word document, and it was a malicious Word macro. When you clicked enable, it ran the macro code, and that macro code reached out to the internet, downloaded a Trojan, like a little remote control access Trojan, and ran that. And that Trojan file reached out to the internet and connected to my command and control server here, effectively giving me full control of poor old Don's computer now. I can type all these commands. I can see exactly what he's up to. In fact, to prove it to you, that's not smoke and mirrors, I can run the screenshot command. And whoops, I'm now looking right over his shoulder and I can see everything that he is up to. I can then, let's have a poke around his system. Let's have a look in his documents folder while poor old Don is reading this very long document. And in his documents folder, let's see, well, I would say that one looks interesting. Passwords.xls. Yeah, I'm going to download that off his computer, pull it through the internet, all the way down to my local hacker workstation. Oh no! Who amongst us has not saved passwords to an Excel file or a text file or something and left it lying around? And here's all his logins and his usernames and his very sophisticated passwords. It's often not as easy as this. For the sake of a demo, quick and to the point, but I often find passwords lying around either in a file or in your inbox or somewhere that you should not put them. Maybe Don gets a little bit anxious and he decides to open his password manager and he's going to go log into this portal about the press release. He's going to type in his master password to its password manager. The hacker can't see it, except we are monitoring keystrokes. Boom, there's his password for his password manager, Hunter2. Bit of an inside joke for those in the know. And there's his login and his password. And maybe he copies that password and he thinks, okay, I'm going to go log into this press release here and see what's actually going on. Acme Corp press release portal, don.clark at acmecorp.com. And he'll paste in his password. So I copied his password there, so maybe the hackers can't see it, right? Accept clipboard, get data. Oh no, I'm also getting your clipboard. And there's a super strong password, but I've got it as the hacker. Generally, what would happen from this point is you'd break into Don's computer, but that's just a stepping stone, right? Hackers want to dig deep into the network from there. And a very quick way to illustrate that is I could check what systems does Don's laptop have access to. So it looks like he has access to systems inside the network that I can't reach from the internet, but now I can step through his computer to get deeper into the network. So for example, we could have a look at, which one did I want to have a look at? Let's look at R drive, which is internal research. So a whole bunch of internal research documents here, top secret, research methods, drug trials. That sounds pretty interesting. Let's have a look at the X drive. Updated staff passwords, fantastic. I would go and download the heck out of that. So grab some more passwords. That's from an internal data server now. And maybe finally, what were the other ones that I had? RX, let's have a look at Y drive, customer data. That sounds delicious. And yeah, there's the passwords I downloaded from this internal file server. Thank you. So it's all about getting stepping stones of things to help you get access to other systems until you find the crown jewels. Oh, and here I find dbconf.back, a backup file to a database. I find these all the time. NB, move this to secure drive. Whoops, you didn't. So we broke into Don's computer, got access to some other server on the inside, and this server says, hey, by the way, here is another username and password to get access to a further internal system, and they even give me the command to run it, which I could then just run from deep inside the network and reconnect to Acme Corp internal system. This is a database server. Oh no, here's all the internal customer data, names, addresses, email addresses, everything. So that's quite a quick kind of 5-10 minute demo of what this kind of thing goes, how it kind of goes down. Obviously, normally it takes a lot longer, but the last thing a hacker will probably do at this point, once they've pilfered all that data, boom, whoops, go and deploy some ransomware. So as simple as that, run this, all of your files get zipped up, encrypted, and well, worst day of your life, I would say. Okay, all well and terrifying, but stay with me. Let's go back to our slide deck. Presenter view, and let me share screen again, share window, share slides. So very quick whistle stop tour there, but the point being, initial bit of social engineering, user clicks links or does something bad, logs in, pilfers from layer to layer, stealing data. But let's rewind the clock. How could this have gone down differently? Let's go back to the original email. So before Don could do anything, say he opened this email and he's about to click that link. Oh, but wait, he gets a contextual nudge pop-up saying, hey, before you're clicking, are you familiar with the sender? Big red arrow, look at that. Oh, he might think, that does look a little bit funny. That's not Laura's actual email address. And I'm getting a little bit of a nudge to remind me that sometimes things cannot be as they seem. But he's fairly confident, so he clicks the link anyway. And he gets taken to that press release portal we saw earlier. He bangs in his username and password, but before he clicks login, he gets, oh, hey, you arrived at this page after clicking a link in an email. Double check for phishing. It's like, oh, actually, that's a big stop sign there. They're being a bit serious now. It's kind of like having Glenn standing behind you, tapping you on the shoulder. That looks a little bit suspicious. Are you sure you really want to do that? Well, maybe he's still curious about that Word document, and he opens it up, and he's ready to click enable content. But just before he can click it, hey, safe mode protects you from malicious content. I really don't think you should push that button. So the idea is that traditional phishing training, you do it once a year, you do a quiz, you watch a video, Your staff have forgotten in 5 minutes. What you need, and what I really love about red flags, is you get these micro nudges at the exact points where staff need to be reminded because they're busy. They don't have time to think about this. They don't understand the complexities of all the security stuff that we're always babbling on about. So with red flags, you have your own personal Glenn standing behind you, tapping you on the shoulder. For a fee, I could come to your office and literally stand behind you if you like, but this is probably more cost effective. But what else can red flags do? Let's say you're at the airport. So I'm off the airport after this call, as I said, and you want to do some work. But let's have a little pop-up. Hey, by the way, Glenn's tapping you on the shoulder. You're connected to an insecure Wi-Fi. Just be prudent as to what you're doing. People could be watching. Ooh, okay, thanks, Glenn. Maybe you're copying files onto USB drive. Very, very sensitive files at the office. Hey, by the way, remember USBs are easy to mislay. Consider a safer option like approved cloud platform. Just a few examples. There's about 40 different nudges that red flags has. The point being that it's super duper useful to have, it's not even training, it's just having these little nudges right at the point you need them. Because if you watched a video on USB drives 6 months ago, you're not going to remember it now when you're late for a meeting and you've got to copy files on. That little nudge keeps it front of mind. I'd say in general, security is like an onion. Lots of layers, lots of things that you can do. And I want you to go away today thinking about how you can make my job harder. How can you make the hacker's life more difficult? And there's lots of things you can do. The basic cyber hygiene will get you almost all the way. MFA, patching, look after your legacy systems, password managers, know what you have. So asset management, what things do you have? I love RunZero. They're the same guys who made the Metasploit I showed you. Figure out what you have. What assets do you have? What stuff can hackers poke at? But most importantly for today is people. Enable your people. Help your people. Make them part of your security team. And as much as I love, like I have my own spear phishing simulation platform called Capenta.io. But to be honest, many years later, I'm not sold on the efficacy of it. And I don't think it actually gives good results. Go check out Red Flags. I think they're onto something really hot. Also, the average time from breach to knowing you've been breached is 197 days. Thanks to Canaries, friends of mine, they don't pay me. I just love their product. All my clients run Thanks to Canaries. That's either tokens or Canaries. What are these things? They allow you to find out you've been breached in minutes, not 200 days, which is about the average. Marks and Spencer, they got hacked 2 months later. They found out they've been hacked. How they find out? Well, a ransom note. If you remember that password file I hacked earlier, it actually turns out that was a tokened document. What that means is it was left around to entice a hacker to open it. When they opened it, I felt my phone buzz. I got a message on my phone saying, hey, Canary token was just triggered. Someone opened that fake staff passwords document on that server. Someone's poking around where they shouldn't. You should go have a look. Canary tokens are free, so go check that out. I leave these documents all over on my desktop, in my inbox, on a USB drive in my bedside drawer, so I know if someone's poking around where they shouldn't. Then they also have Canaries, which are honeypot devices that look like real devices, and hackers can't distinguish them. This is the only way I've ever been caught on an engagement. Finally, my own outfit, Aga Labs. I would love it if you had a look at our brand new website. We just launched it this week. We're a small operation, all ex-hackers. To be honest, we just want to kill ransomware. We think ransomware sucks. We've built a novel solution that does better than anyone else on the market. Parting words, resilience over perfection. If you can do one small thing every day to improve your security posture, I promise you'll be okay, and you'll keep the Glens of the world out of your systems. With that, thank you so much for your time and for listening to me. Thank you to Red Flags and Secon. Please go and engage with Red Flags. I think they're doing something really amazing. If you want to learn more about me, there's my personal speaking website and my Aga Labs website. Scan the QR code to learn more about me. But thank you so much for your time today.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Glenn. So we'll just do a quick Q&A. I'm sure we've gone slightly over, but if you've got time, we do have one question in the chat. So we've got a question from Noman who has asked that with the rapid adoption of generative AI, the threat landscape evolving, are companies keeping pace with their cybersecurity defenses to protect against sophisticated AI-powered attacks? And what what role are regulators playing in shaping a secure AI ecosystem?
It's a good question, and it's one I get on every talk I've given this year. There's a few ways to approach it, right? So actually, I gave a talk at AWS, Amazon, a couple of months ago, literally on weaponizing Gen AI, and there's a few things to keep in mind. So one is hacking Gen AI, so hacking maybe the bots or the agents or the things themselves, using generative AI to enhance your hacking capabilities. So as a hacker, can I go and, hey, ChatGPT, can you teach me how to make ransomware? And the other part is using Gen AI to enhance your defenses. And there are so many really fascinating companies who are doing quite clever things to enable that. So, there's a lot out there, but I'd say Dreadnought is an interesting company to check out. So they've got they're really pushing the envelope on defensive capabilities, but also they have training courses and things to help you get up to speed with Gen AI. There's Expo, so XBOW. They are currently, or they were recently, #1 on this hacker challenge list. They beat all the humans hacking into systems, and that was quite an interesting milestone. I think the short-ish answer is that we're not seeing a huge jump in offensive capability at this stage, I would say. So Gen AI, I think, will allow the average or script kiddie level hacker to get a little bit better, but I don't see it as enhancing already sophisticated hackers. This will probably change in about a year or so, I would say. But I'll say a short answer is not a massive difference on the offensive side, but stuff is coming. On the defensive side, there are some interesting things. Final note is yesterday, I think it was yesterday, who was it? Let's see that. I think it was maybe Esset. They discovered the world's first Gen AI piece of ransomware, which is quite interesting, worth a read if you go and check it out. And hey, Agar stops it.
Amazing. That's a really insightful answer. And then we have a question from Stacey. So what do you think of some of the basics plus one elements like enabling pass keys to avoid some of those clipboard captures or key scans?
Yeah, good question, Stacey. The short answer is passwords suck. They're kind of a bolt-on idea from the 80s. The internet wasn't built for authentication. It was only an afterthought. Oh, actually, we can't just have everything open for free. Maybe we need to put things in place. And they've basically served their purpose. But there's far too much onus on the users to remember different passwords. And should I use a password manager? Shouldn't I? So they are on their way out with smarter technologies, pass keys and passwordless systems and different forms of auth. But while they are still with us, definitely use other mechanisms. So password managers, and most modern smartphones will offer to remember your passwords and things like that. People often say, well, I don't want to store all my passwords in one place because if a hacker breaks in, they can just steal it. Not, to some degree, but the point is that it's much more likely that if you use the same password everywhere or use a weak password, that you get compromised that way. So definitely do use a password manager. You only have to remember one password. I use one password, so remember just one password. And you can have organizational level. So I recommend one password, and they have a company-wide options. You can share passwords with a team, but have different vaults and things. But definitely don't just keep passwords in your head, and definitely don't reuse passwords. The threat there is I break into one system, I break into your Facebook, let's get your Facebook password. I don't really care about your Facebook, but using the same password on your corporate email login or something. Also, if you go to haveibeenpwned.com, you can check data breaches and see if your details exist in a data breach. What hackers will do is they'll download those data breaches. So LinkedIn got hacked, for example. All the passwords, they're encrypted, but they've been cracked. So the passwords for your LinkedIn from 5 years ago are public knowledge. So hackers will go and grab that password, maybe try to log into LinkedIn, but if you also use that password elsewhere, that's no good.
Brilliant. I think that was a really helpful answer. And yeah, I think going into this industry is one of the first things I had to do was change every single password.
Well done.
So it is really good to know. And so just want to give a chance for anyone to ask any more questions. But if that is all for today, Thank you so much, Glenn. There will be a poll now for everyone just to see how you've all found this webinar, and it will help us create some more webinars in the future like this one and give you guys some resources that really help you with your jobs in this ever-evolving landscape. I want to give a massive thank you to Glenn for his time here and all those insights, and a really big thank you to RedFlags who've sponsored today. And you saw a little bit of RedFlags in action there, and you can just see how valuable those nudges are to get you in that right, when you're in a rush and that phishing training has gone from your head, all you need is a nudge, and that is exactly what the magic of RedFlags is. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. Thank you, Glenn and RedFlags. I hope you all have an amazing afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Katie. See you all.